Okay, for the last few days, I've been trying to understand what's going on. Why does Trump keep talking about Greenland? I get it. I understand it now, I think. And I'm going to share with you how I am processing it, what I understand about why Greenland is important. Okay, so let's start with this. This is a picture of Greenland. And again, on a normal map, it looks a lot bigger than it does on a globe. And you'll see a difference between this and the globe in just a little bit. This is a village in Greenland. It looks like something out of a Christmas card. It's idyllic, but Greenland is actually the least populated place on Earth. I mean, if you just take country by country, Greenland is at the very bottom of the list. This is population per square kilometer. Less than a full person per square kilometer. It looks like less than a person per 3 square kilometers. And if you look all the way up the list, you're getting into places like population per kilometer. Places like Singapore and Hong Kong and things like that are far more populated. Here, we're at the very bottom of the list with Greenland. So let's look at this. And I've talked about this before. Why talk about Greenland? And I was trying to understand, looking at Anders Puck Nielsen talking about, can Trump actually buy Greenland? It's absurd. He can't actually do that. So I already covered that, and I'm not going to cover that again. Then I was showing this yesterday where the Putin's babushkas were talking about how Denmark needs to repent and just come to beg forgiveness and bow before Putin. Bow before Putin? Why? And instead of trying to sell out to the United States, you need it. And in that video we were talking about, and I'm not going to go back over this, Greenland Prime Minister saying, yeah, we don't really want to be Americans. We want to be Greenlanders. We don't want to be Denmark. We don't want to be the United States. We want to be Greenlanders. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Now, here's a video just giving you a sense of what Greenland is actually like, and then I'll talk about its geopolitical importance.
Finally made it! This is the emptiest country in the world! Yes, emptiest. 99% of this country is empty. No one lives here. Here or here! The country is so big, but only 57,000 people live in it. And I found them! Welcome to... That's it! Just 57,000 people living in the world's largest island. For every one human, they have 7 kilometers of nature. They live around icebergs, mountains, waterfalls, and it is incredible. This is crazy! Wow, that's huge. There is no traffic, no skyscrapers, no noise in the entire country. There is only you and very friendly locals who are one with nature. Just listen to their prime minister.
Okay, before you hear the prime minister, it's not because they want nature or idyllic beauty or cold or for introverts to be alone. That's not it at all. We'll come to that in just a moment.
In Greenland, we are one with nature.
The emptiest country in the world will make you feel alive again. Sometimes it's good to take a break from humanity. Let's look at it! See you tomorrow!
Okay, so that's Greenland, but there's more to the story here. Okay, this is Radio Free Europe saying, what were Trump's comments on acquiring Greenland really about? So I thought, well, I've been trying to understand this myself. So here's the actual article, and you'll get a sense of why it's geopolitically important. Washington was interested in acquiring Greenland to mitigate threats emanating from the Arctic long before Trump came along, even offering Denmark $100 million in gold for the icy island shortly after the conclusion of World War II. So this is not a new thing, but Trump has brought it back out into the spotlight. Greenland is growing in importance as we find ourselves in a global competition with China and in a new technological revolution in regard to warfare. Okay, so it's China as much as it is Russia that's driving it, probably more China than Russia. So Greenland is important from missile defense perspective, from a space perspective, and from global competition perspective, in which shipping and maritime sea lanes are increasingly important. Now, Russia has been doing more in the Arctic. China has been up in the Arctic, which China really has no reason to be up in the Arctic as far as its own geography. But this is a thing. Okay. An autonomous a territory of the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland is physically closer to the United States, with just 1,900 kilometers separating the state of Maine from the Arctic island shores. As a territory of Denmark, it is part of NATO, but Greenland is pursuing independence from Copenhagen, and some experts fear that it could open a door for Russia and China to gain a foothold in the country. Okay, so now we understand some of this is that the importance of actually securing Greenland is so that if they do become independent, which they wouldn't be, I don't know if they'd still be part of NATO if they're no longer part of Denmark. I don't think they would be. They'd still be friendly with them, but to secure them so that Russia and China can't compete and edge their way in. Okay, while the United States has already a space base on Greenland for missile defense and space surveillance, control of the entire island would enable Washington to better defend against naval and air threats emanating from the region, as well as dangers from space. Okay, retired U.S. general who served as the commander of the U.S. Northern Command, told a Senate hearing in February of 2020 that if Russia were to attack the United States, it would likely do so through the Arctic. Now, that means attack with missiles and things along those lines. It might also include troops. I'm not sure, but yes, over the Arctic. And you'll understand why. If you look at the geography, it's actually closer from the Arctic than from many other parts of Russia. The Arctic is no longer a fortress wall. Our oceans are no longer protective moats. They are now avenues of approach, he told the hearing. So that's part of the calculation. Now, China also has some other ambitions. While China is not an Arctic nation, it is seeking to become a major player in the region. In recent years, Beijing has sought to buy ports and other infrastructure and mining rights on Greenland, though it's not been successful. So if they're already trying to do that, this push to acquire Greenland is to keep them from being able to do that. That's part of the logic here. The United States has suspected China's real interest in these projects was dual-use sensors and radars in the Arctic Circle to help control their military satellites, gather intelligence on U.S. space-based operations in the region. If China can disrupt our kill chain, our space-based assets, our satellites, then we will struggle to shoot anything down. Okay, that's important. If we're going to struggle to shoot things down, if China can disrupt that, we will struggle to target, identify, attack. That's why Greenland ends up actually mattering a lot. So Greenland has strategic military importance to the United States. And so I'm not saying that this approach is the way to approach us either, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. It's not surprising that they're focused on the Arctic because the U.S. is weak on the surface presence in the Arctic. The United States has no more than 2 functioning icebreakers compared to about 4 and a few dozen respectively for both China and Russia. So yeah, there's a real race here. Receding ice will also make it easier to mine Greenland's massive reserves of natural resources. So the conclusion here was this general saying, guaranteeing a western-leaning Greenland is extremely important, but now this is where I land as well with this final conclusion, but it doesn't have to be through sovereign ownership. So this is the mistake that we're making, is that we're acting as though we have to own Greenland in order to prevent problems from China and Russia. So that's the idea with Trump Jr. going to Greenland and creating this, what looks like a stage thing about, hey, we want to join the United States. Like they were all wearing MAGA hats before he got there. I don't think that's it at all. So this looks to me like Trump understands what a hostile takeover is and is trying to do that with Greenland or be pushy about that. Let's listen to a little bit more before I give my final take. This is on Fox News talking about why they're trying to control Greenland.
What does Greenland offer to the United States? If that were a serious piece of American expansion, what would we get out of Greenland?
Well, they would get something and we would get something. As climate changes, I believe naturally, it's easier to exploit natural resources in Canada, and especially if you have U.S. capital and the resources there. Greenlanders who are ruled by Denmark, really mad at their high cost of living, we can help make them rich. If they had an Alaska-style trust fund where they get revenue instead of the government from natural resource extraction, they could all be millionaires. So they would be better off and we would be better off.
All right. What is Greenland?
Okay, so natural resource extraction, that's a big thing. I think there's also a military aspect too, as well. I mean, when you look at this, Greenland, okay, here's the United States and Canada. Like, if you look at the Arctic Ocean, Greenland's actually kind of a big player if you're going to look at what could be coming across from which direction, right? So, and again, this is the size of Greenland as opposed to what, when you look at it flat on the map from the top of the ocean as opposed to, or top of the globe as opposed to on a flat map. Okay, so yeah, but the way that we've approached it has been all wrong. I think that's part of the problem here. Now, early in the wars, and here's the analogy that I would give. Early in the war, when people were saying, well, you know, Putin has to take Ukraine because Ukraine is going to become part of NATO. And what would you think if Canada was going to become part of the Russian sphere of influence and, you know, a Russian allied country? Well, my answer at the time was this, that, you know, you'd have to play nice with Russia, or with, not Russia, with Canada, in order to, you know, incentivize them to do things that you want to work together with, rather than just take over the country. Same kind of principle applies here, whether it's an active military takeover, which I don't think it is, or whether it's trying to strong arm them into selling Greenland to the United States, which it seems more of that kind of thing, like more of a hostile business takeover, the way that Trump's approaching it. I think his approach is all wrong. What you want to do is you want to get together and cozy up relations with Greenland so that Greenland does not want to leave your orbit or your sphere, and be a very good compatible partner with Greenland and with Denmark. Now, it's already in NATO, but if it gains independence, what could happen? And would the Chinese interest or Russian interest be able to get a foothold there? That's why it's important, and that's why we keep talking about this. Okay, tell me what I missed in the comments below. Am I beating down the right trail? Is it making sense now why Trump was talking about Greenland? By the way, it's part of the problem here is that Trump is talking about it. If you actually wanted to do what you were doing, you should be really careful, really quiet about it, and just be like on the down low, try to make your deal, work out with Denmark and Greenlanders about what you could do or not do, rather than just come out, you know, all guns blazing. But Trump seems to have only one way of negotiating, and this is where we are. All right, that's all that I have for you. Tell me what you think. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.